Hello, I'm Unbound Sage, and welcome to GODFORGE Alpha Test. Today's subject is talking about Divinity. So, Divinity is your God juice. It decides how often and when you can ultimate. And I would say that if we look at a character, we can look at, say, Aphrodite's here. Look at her ability, and we can see her ultimate. The biggest indicator to how often you can cast an ultimate is your maximum divinity. This high number can tell us a lot of things about how often you can expect to cast this, basically. So 2000 is really high, so don't expect to cast this very often at all. It is different for every character. So if we look at a character like Hercules, his max divinity is not even a quarter of what hers is. Of course, he is, you know, starred up here, and or what are these called? Ascended. So it does make this cheaper, but doesn't change the fact that his is still very cheap. So there are two ways to gain divinity. I'm going to call one active divinity and one passive divinity gain. So if we look back at Hercules here, this here will tell you how to gain divinity with your champion. So for Hercules, he gains 500 divinity whenever he defeats someone. That's an entire bar, right? So this is a very good divinity gain. Compare that to a champion such as Odin here. Ragnarok costs even more than Aphrodite's does, and he gains 30 whenever an ally or enemy increases or decreases turn meter. So you can see that's relatively uncommon, and the gain is small compared to the maximum. So relying on this to gain your divinity will take you a long time. But in exchange, you get this relatively powerful ultimate, right? It has the ability to execute. So, pros and cons. So when we talk about passive divinity, there's a stat that we very much care about. And let's go back to this Aphrodite. She is ungeared, but it's this initiative stat here. And so initiative has absolutely no gain on active divinity. So Aphrodite here says that whenever she puts a buff on someone, she gets divinity. Your initiative does not affect this. So those are the only two ways to get a divinity, is passively as turns go by based on your initiative stat, and doing whatever your champion wants to do. So in this case, putting buffs on anyone. And notice this is anyone putting buffs on your allies. So if you have a bunch of people that put buffs everywhere, you'll see her divinity skyrocket. But that's not has anything to do with her initiative. That has to do with her passive here. Looking at other stuff. So let's talk about how good initiative is. In my opinion, I don't think it's very good at all. I'm gonna be straight with you. I'm gonna talk at the end of the video about like when to care about it, but I wouldn't really. But notice here that this Aphrodite she starts with 100 initiative, and my other Aphrodite is geared for this video, and you can notice that she has 200 initiative. So since she has about double, she will gain double passive divinity in battle. And once again, getting hit doesn't get you divinity unless you're like Heimdall, and it says in his kit that your team getting hit gives divinity. That's only Heimdall that does that, or other champions that do that. You have to do exactly what your champion says. So since she says getting hit, like it doesn't say anything about getting hit. She does not get divinity when she's hit. She does not get divinity when she does damage. She only gets divinity when she gives a buff, or if someone gives her divinity, like a Shamash giving out divinity, because he does that with his passive, right? Whenever they join attack, increase the divinity. But it's either an explicit divinity gain or a passive through initiation or initiative. Sorry. So I have a few battles I kind of want to go through just to kind of show you what you're looking at when it comes to passive divinity gain. So we're going to talk about YDG. I would say his name, but I looked at the pronunciation and forgot it. Actually, you know what? I'm not a coward. Let me look at it again. Something like that. I butchered it. I'm sorry, I'm American. You can blame me in the comments below. But anyway, if we look at this, he is completely ungeared, right? And if you see here, he has a very similar divinity. He has the same divinity cost as uh, Aphrodite's. And you can see here that he gets divinity whenever he damages an enemy, and then twice as much under blades. The beeping is from the dragon, by the way. He's funny like that. So if you hear wood beeping, it is the dragon beeping, not anything from you. He is ungeared. And I want to show you. He starts with 300 divinity, and Aphrodite also starts with 200. So they have a divinity cap that's about the same, and a initial divinity that's about the same. So just for the sake of the test, so when I'm talking about stuff, you have the reference. So we're gonna go into the cavern, and I have not beat stage 151 yet. I haven't even bothered. After I got down to it, I started doing divinity tests. That's the kind of person I am. But we're gonna go here, and I'm gonna show you, kind of prove my point here. This is the ungeared Aphrodite and the ungeared YDG. If we go into here, you'll see that we only gain divinity in between turns, right? And you'll see they have a similar amount. She'll get a small amount when she places her speed up on herself, right? You see that? Small amount. And then in between the turns, they gain some amount. And you can see it's comparable, right? We'll go through a few battles, but you'll see, or a few turns. But in general, it's comparable. The dragon's going ahead a little bit because he has higher initiative, and then he gets more whenever he bites. So, but comparable. Now, we're going to take this Aphrodite, who is ungeared, and put in the 212 divinity Aphrodite. And we'll do the battle again. Notice that she has much more divinity, right? And divinity goes in the same clock as turns do. So we got a large burst of divinity because everyone's turn meter was low. It was 0 when the battle started. And then, she filled up her turn meter. She got a ton of divinity. So we'll kill someone. And notice these turns are close. So watch. When the dragon takes his turn, I'll slow it down for you. When the dragon takes his turn, this guy is right after. Look at this bar. He is right after, and then this guy's right after. There won't be that much divinity gain. But watch after this turn, to Aphrodite's turn, there'll be a lot of divinity gain. You'll see no divinity gain, like very little, if any. Very little. And then now you're going to see a huge jump. Yep. And that is because speed matters when it comes to it. The more gap there is in turn meter, the more divinity you gain. It is linked to turn meter. So you'll see here, there's a little bit, right? And then we kill it, and then you'll see in the next wave, because we're going to start from 0 again, we expect to see a large jump in our divinity gauge. Here we see a big jump. Oop. That's because we went from 0 turn meter to full turn meter. And then if we killed someone, you'll see it go up very little, right? Even if she places her buff, we're not quite full. You see, we didn't even fill up our bar. That's how close the turn meter was. We still don't have the bar filled. That's how close the turn meter is. So basically, turn meter needs to fill, and then he placed a buff on himself. So that's why she got that. Or I don't know how that happened, but probably from his ascension or whatever. But yeah, so I think you get the point there. Now, I think there's an analogy I want to make when it comes to this, and I want you to think about Dragon Ball Z. Think of Goku in the early days, when he was fighting Vegeta, right? And Vegeta's in the Grade 8 form, and Goku's charged with the Spirit Bomb. That's a very slow fight, and he has lots of time to charge. But as the fight speeds up, when you move throughout the series and you get to Kid Buu, think how long it took him to charge that Spirit Bomb. And I'd like to think it's not because it was, it took him longer to do, which it did. But let's just say it didn't take it longer to do. The fight was so fast that it felt longer. And so I'm going to show that to you now. We're going to bring in this Hercules. And this Hercules is completely geared, and he's twice as fast as everyone else. I want you to notice how the turn meter interacts with divinity gains, especially when you have someone who is a much higher speed than everyone else in here, or as speeds increase, rather. So, we remember how quickly they were gaining divinity. I'm going to speedrun this with my twice as fast Hercules. He has, like I said, 212 speed. Right, so just click. And you won't even see that big of a jump because his turn comes so quickly. Like this isn't no initiative. This is invested initiative. This is 200 initiative. Boom. Right. And you can see where we got the ultimate halfway through the second wave. When the fights are quicker, right, you don't even get that much initiative. So this is why I said in the beginning, I don't think that initiative is the answer. And I'm going to slow down the fight a little bit, still with using Hercules, to show an important point. I think that is important. It's not that this is nerfing Aphrodite, right? I'm going to use his A2 so he doesn't instantly kill the wave. When it's Aphrodite's turn, she has the same initiative she had in the second battle when she was by herself with YDG, right? And the YDG is a stand for like someone who's not invested. If you go back and you look at that, this is the same bar. So when it's her turn, it's actually Hercules' turn again, but it's basically her turn. When it is her turn, she will have the same bar, right? It's that the fight is happening faster. Her charge rate is the same, but I want you to equate speed to not to charge rate, but charge time. So she had less time to charge it in that last battle we saw, but now I gave her more time by taking more actions with a faster character, right? So basically what I'm saying is, when a 100 speed character would act, she gains the same amount of divinity, right? So she gained half as much because a 200 speed character is acting right now, if that makes sense. So, that's that test done. So I want to kind of wrap up the video with saying, is initiative important? Not really. I don't think so. I think initiative comes into play when you need your ultimate at a certain timing. And this can be for more speed tune and initiative tune teams. I believe you can initiative tune. I believe you can speed tune. Like you can raid. I tried to figure out the numbers behind it, and I learned a lot about Divinity doing that, but I couldn't quite get the numbers pinned down for you guys, and I'm sorry about that. But as you're playing the game, I would not worry about initiative at all. And I think the big problem with initiative is if we look at Aphrodite and where her initiative is coming from. This initiative is coming from the helmet, which can give you crit rate for your damage dealers. And it's coming from boots, which gives you speed. And I don't think you would ever take an initiative boot over a speed boot on a character like Aphrodite's. But I think taking an initiative helmet could be good, right? Considering the alternative stats, if you have good substats to back it up, right? If you get a speed substat, then I think initiative for the main stat is probably going to be your main source for your support characters. But I think for the future game, I think, if you play more with initiative, you will learn that it is basically to keep up with like 200 speed people. If you have 200 speed initiative, you're basically like, the YDG in the first fight where you're not really getting your turn meter. And that's what's going to you saw it with Hercules too. She didn't really get her turn meter. So I think in the future game, like if the game comes out, I'd like to see these initiative numbers bumped up. I think maybe even a rank 5 helmet at level 16 should probably even give like 100 initiative with how fast you're going to run your characters. Maybe that's a mistake, maybe that's not, but I would like to see these numbers really pumped up. So, So initiative stays relevant as speeds get faster, because you're not going to run a slow team. Speeds. You need like 200 speed for Fafnir. So, the passive divinity gains is almost negligible. You really like active is what people are doing. You'll see here is like that's why the Shamash imprint is so popular, because this is the wrong one, because the imprint gives 50 and he gives 100. So that's where your divinity gains are coming from. Divinity gains are coming from when you're doing these teams. Is when you have all these team ups with him, right? He's giving out a ton of divinity, and then with her active divinity requirement is something you're doing anyway. So that's why her stuff is always up as well. But it has nothing to do with initiative at all. And so it really feels lackluster. So, you're always going to go fast, and that makes, it's hard to go fast and make the initiative back it up, basically. And the faster you go, the more divinity you need just to get back, or the more, basically the faster you go, the worse passive divinity is, and the more you need to make up with that with initiative if you want to keep up. But that's why I say I think initiative needs to be given out more freely in gear, because you never see someone with 200 speed, 200 initiative, and that's like what you get in the first fight, where like it takes 6 turns to cycle to your ultimate with only passive, if not more. With that, I think that'll do it on my take on divinity and initiative and where that all fits in together. For the future, I would like to do more in-depth videos like this, talk about a specific stat or specific thing in the game. And I also think about doing lore videos on the characters and just how they tie into GODFORGE, right? I know GODFORGE will have its own story, but I think I'd like to tie it in more to real life, like who is Horus in, the Egyptian pantheon, right? And who is Masashi, right? And go over why their abilities are called Sword Saint. Why is his ability called, Agitating Blow? Right? Why is his ability called Two Heavens is One? And just, do small videos on that. But with that, I'd like to thank Fateless. I'd like to thank Fateless for allowing me to play their game. I'd thank you guys for sticking it out. And if you like the videos, subscribe and comment, whatever. And I'll see you next time. Take care.